Hi, my name is Phil
Hello.
Grabsky.
Start
What?
again. Sorry. I said hello to you.
And cut.
And take two.
Let me stop that. Cool. Hi, my name is Phil Grabsky. I'm the producer of John Singer Sargent, Fashion and Swagger, and indeed the executive producer of Exhibition on Screen. I'm here with David Bickerstaff, who is the director of the John Singer Sargent film, and also we co-wrote it, and David has shot it largely and also edited it. Remarkable. We are going to spend the next 10 minutes just answering a few questions that we've had in about the film, and we hope that our answers might add a little bit to your either enjoyment of the film or, if you haven't yet seen it, your desire to see the film. First question, we have 5 questions here. What were the challenges of covering 2 exhibitions in 2 different countries in such a short space of time? I'll just offer a preliminary answer to that, which was that this exhibition began in Boston at the Museum of Fine Arts and then transferred to Tate Britain. Essentially the same exhibition, slightly different title. One, the Boston exhibition was titled Fashioned by Sargent, and the Tate exhibition was titled Sargent and Fashion. The challenge for us, of course, is gaining access, filming the exhibitions as best we can, filming the curators and other historians and other individuals in both countries. But let me ask David that question as he directed the film. What were the challenges that you can outline?
Well, when we start to make these films, we always rely on understanding what the curator's intention is for the film or for the exhibition, sorry. And because that always forms our narrative backbone. And so we were very keen to get hold of the catalogs. And I was assuming the catalogs would be different for the 2 exhibitions, but actually they were exactly the same catalogs, except they had different covers for the different names. So I was intrigued. We went to Boston first, and obviously they had it laid out in a particular way, and it was not chronological, which was interesting for us because usually we look to chronology as a way of trying to unfold a story, but it was more thematic. And so we get to understand what the themes were. The show in Boston is gorgeous. It was beautifully and very theatrical. And, you know, they had placed all the dresses in vitrines, and it was a very interesting show. We were very excited to go there. And so when we went to the Tate exhibition, we were half expecting it to be almost the same, but it was quite different, and quite different in the way that they had approached the way they painted the walls, the order of the paintings. Even though the catalogs were exactly the same, the exhibitions had quite different feelings to them, and quite different approaches to them, which presented a challenge for us because when we're talking about the same painting, we can't necessarily cut between one gallery and the next. We decided that we would probably dedicate a painting to a particular gallery because maybe their curators talk about that in a particular way, or maybe it's part of their collection. So that's the way that was the challenge of working out who does what, who talks about what, and where do we then film that particular painting.
And within the bigger context, of course, which is that cinema is all about storytelling. And when an exhibition is a biography and chronological, we have a pretty clear narrative storyline that we can follow, which we normally do, not always. This wasn't like that. So we had to really tease out the stories to make the film as gripping as we possibly could. And I think one of the things that you've done, that we've done, is make it feel very contemporary. This isn't a film where we take you back to the 19th century and leave you there. This is a film where there's constant resonances with the way that we are today, the way that we take pictures, the way that we commission portraits, for example, perhaps, or the way that we present ourselves as humans. Second question, did your opinion of Sargent change during the process of making the film?
That's an interesting one, because I think I was not invested in Sargent as an artist so much. I knew of his famous works and things like that, but I wouldn't say he was on the top of my radar as a great artist. And then when it was presented to me that would be making this connection with fashion, I thought, oh, come on, how can that be? What is that connection? But actually, when I read the catalogs and I saw the exhibitions, I realized this guy was an absolute genius. And this guy was the most amazing technician, the most amazing artist. And then when you unpack his life and the way he communicated with people and the sort of things he did in the studio, from how people reported working with him or sitting for him, you realize that he was a large, charming man who had a great personality, which don't often come across in these paintings until you start to look at them a bit closer. And then you understand the relationship between the sitter and the artist. And I think you could definitely see in some of his portraits, he was much more like friends, or but portraits of friends, or portraits of the actors or performers. You can see he really related to those people, and they must have had amazing conversations and amazing sessions where they're all sitting all together in the room and discussing things. So I guess my opinion of him grew with the making of the film, to the point where I think he's one of the most underrated, perhaps, but the most highly technically proficient artists I've ever come across.
Totally agree. And the more we worked on this film, the more in awe I was of him as an artist, and seeing it on the big screen, as we have now, staggering. I mean,
we've seen a lot of art making these films.
Yeah.
And I come from a fine art background, so I was a painter when I first started out, and I could see the way that he would create a shoe by just going slash, and there's the shoe. I thought, that's magic. There's a great story about Picasso when they talked about, well, what makes a great artist, and he said, well, if you draw a yellow circle and then I draw a yellow circle, I bet you'll be able to tell who the artist is, because there is something about the way the artist draws and applies that has an allure and a magic, that is an innate skill that is hard to teach. But if you have it inside you, then it's absolutely amazing when you see it. And that's what makes him a great artist.
Penultimate question. If you are interested more in fashion than painting, what does this film offer?
Yeah, I think this is a good question, actually, because it's quite rare that fine art and design disciplines come together, and it's usually viewed with a bit of suspicion. But I think this is very clever, the way that they've done it, because in the research, you realize that actually he was like a creative director, on a film set. He was there looking at what was in front of him, looking at the clothing that person was wearing, getting the key to understanding their personality, and then arranging the set works, the dress, the makeup, maybe the hair, maybe, to achieve the communication agenda that he had for that particular person. And that is exactly what a fashion photographer does. He is there looking for that language that makes this relationship between fabric and our human selves, and how what desire is, what memory is, what all sorts of things like that. And a fashion photographer does it like with a few clicks and stuff. The painter obviously takes a lot more time with it. But this is why I was very interested to get the opinion and the observations of people in fashion, and people like fashion photographers like Tim Walker, like Mark O'Flaherty, people who have a passion for painting and look to painting for inspiration, but their discipline is fashion photography, or their discipline is fashion.
But that information in the film about the House of Worth, the
Yes.
beginning of these extraordinary creations, which of course when they were then, which the wealthier of his sitters would choose, and then when they were seen by whoever got to see the paintings, they would those individuals who saw that painting would then make a beeline for the House of Worth to say, I want one like that or as good as that. I mean, paintings are communicating this desire for distinguishing yourself with great gowns or very fine suits or whatever it might be. I mean, it's the beginning of the age in which we now live in, of the Gucci's and the, you name them. That in the film I thought was really interesting, how, going back 150 years, that was such a part of the conversation between.
And it was the shift in in the status of women. There was the shift in the way that women wore clothing and perceived of clothing. How, fashionability used to be reserved with the reserve of royalty, and so or the aristocracy. And there was a much more this sort of development of achievable fashion or comfortable wear, or and this all happens in Sargent's time, and he is a huge observer of it and very sympathetic to it.
It changes I mean, if you take a painting like the Mona Lisa by Leonardo, if you suddenly think to yourself that Leonardo and the sitter have a conversation about how she wishes to be presented, what she's going to wear, how he's going to represent what she's wearing and how she's looking, and it changes your perception of the painting, rather than this woman is plonked there and then Leonardo just tells her what to wear, tells her how to look, and he just copies her. Last question, because we don't have too much time. Have you a favorite Sargent painting? While you're pondering, I'll answer that in two ways. First of all, my sister has had Madame X above her desk for all her adult life. And when she was a young teenager living in New York, she used to go down on the subway to the Met to see that painting, Madame X. So that clearly is a powerful painting. For me, the one where, when we walked into the exhibition, you and I, in Boston for the first time, the one that really knocked me out is Elsie Palmer.
Yes.
I remember it was the second room and it was kind of there, and it's more than a portrait, more than a photograph. It does something that paintings, I think, can only do and photographs struggle to do. But it is the most remarkable painting. There is a human being on that canvas, just bulging with her knees here and her arms there, and the way she looks at you, that is a painting. I know people talk about, I could sit and look at a painting for an hour. I'm a bit too fidgety to do that, but very often. But that is a painting that I could sit, and I did. I sat sometimes when we were filming, I would just sit and stare at that painting. Extraordinary in the film, worth seeing the film just for that painting. How about you?
Yes, no, I agree. Right up there, Elsie Palmer, or also known as the Lady in White. And it's actually the title, The Lady in White, that I like the most, because it gives her this slightly David Lynch sort of look. She has this incredible, she's just sitting there looking at you and thinking, who is this strange girl? And she doesn't flinch.
Yeah.
Or she doesn't flinch in the painting, it's a frozen moment, but you almost feel like she's just staring at you and she's not flinching.
Yeah.
There's something really spooky about that. And actually, if you look at the painting, the virtuosity of the paint, the way he renders the gown to go around the contour and just flows off the seat that she's seated, the folded hands are like mush. But somehow you read them as these elegant hands. Extraordinary painting. But the other painting I really like is Lady Agnew of Lochnaw, who is an extraordinary painting, which are up in the National Galleries of Scotland. And she just sits there. The backstory for her is brilliant, because she sat there in the chair, slumped, looking slightly bored, and it turns out
teenager. Somebody in the film referred to her.
She was 19. She'd married an older person, and when she came for the sitting, she had a cold. she had flu, and so when you look closely, she's
Yeah.
actually holding a tissue in her hand, and if you look at her eyes, it looks like her makeup's running. I mean, he's just picked up this sort of, oh, do I really have to get my portrait? I'm just going to sit here and do nothing, and
Yeah.
go ahead, just paint me. It's
It's
brilliant. But somehow she has this allure, this sort of sexy sort of allure to her, that it's really incredible painting.
it's funny because we went backwards and forwards about what would be the poster image,
Mm.
Lady Agnew or Madame X, and we had a
Yeah.
real divide in the company, and we mocked up both, and they both look great. And there's an argument that go for Lady Agnew because she's looking at you, go for Madame X because it's more well known. And in the end, we went for Madame X. But I remember when you and I turned up at the outside Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, it was very funny because above their entrance, they had both because they obviously couldn't decide either.
Yes, they couldn't decide either.
It's a
No.
sign. It's a sign of the brilliance of the man. David,
Mm.
thank you very much.
My pleasure. Mm.
We all thoroughly enjoyed the film, and for those of you who haven't seen it, I hope you do thoroughly enjoy it when you do get to see it. Thank you very much.